What if the man you've trusted for over 40 years left behind a letter because he feared his own family would kill him? Billy Crystal didn't cry when he first heard the news. He didn't scream either. He just sat there, frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. And then, quietly, like someone whispering into a storm, he asked, "Who else knows?" Because in that instant, in the space between hearing the words, "Rob Reiner is dead," and the silence that followed, Billy knew this wasn't random. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't a tragic accident. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This was personal. And worse, it was planned. The world knew Rob Reiner as the comedic genius behind When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, and The Princess Bride. A storyteller, a director, a son of the legendary Carl Reiner, a family man. But the world didn't know the Rob Billy knew. The paranoid man. The man who had started sleeping with the door locked. The man who, just a month before his death, told Billy over lunch, "I think someone in my house wants me dead." Billy laughed at the time. How could he not? Rob was dramatic. He always had been. But now the laughter was gone. And all that was left was a growing sense of dread. It all began with a phone call at 6:42 a.m. Billy had just poured his first cup of coffee when his landline rang. Not his assistant. Not his cell. His landline, the one only a handful of people knew. Billy, the voice on the other end was trembling. It was Romy, Rob's youngest daughter. "They're gone, they're dead. Dad and Mom. They're gone." The mug slipped from Billy's hand and shattered on the floor. "What? Romy, what are you talking about?" She was crying now, hysterically, but in between sobs. She said something that chilled him to the bone. "I think she did it." She. There was silence. Then one word. "Tracy." Now pause. Let's sit with that for a second. Imagine someone telling you your best friend was murdered, then adding that their own daughter might have orchestrated it. Would you believe it? Or would you tell yourself, "That's impossible. No child could do that." Not Tracy. Billy wanted to believe the latter. He needed to. But as more details poured in, as the media frenzy exploded, as police descended on the Reiner estate like vultures circling a carcass, Billy began to remember things he had buried, like the way Rob used to avoid talking about Tracy during interviews. Or how, at Carl Reiner's funeral, Tracy showed up late, said nothing, and left early, her face tight, her eyes cold. Or how Rob once admitted, off camera, that he felt he had lost his daughter years ago, not to drugs or fame, but to resentment. "Tracy's angry," Rob had said. "At me, at the industry, at everything. I don't know what she wants anymore." But the world didn't see that. Because the Reiners were Hollywood royalty. Flawed maybe, but safe, familiar, beloved, until they weren't. The crime scene would become the stuff of nightmares. Rob and Michelle Reiner, found stabbed to death in their Brentwood mansion. No signs of forced entry, no valuables taken, no broken windows, no surveillance footage showing outsiders. But there were two things that didn't sit right with investigators. First, Nick Reiner, Rob's troubled son, had been staying in the guest house. Second, there were two sets of muddy footprints found inside the house, but only one matched Nick's size. The other? Smaller. A woman's. Now, to be clear, Nick Reiner was arrested almost immediately. 2 counts of first-degree murder. He had a record. He had motive. He had a history of mental health issues. But something about it didn't feel right. Not to Billy. Not to Romy. Not to those who had seen the family dynamics up close. Nick had been trying to clean up his life. He was back on medication. He had made amends with his father. Barely, but it was a start. And that night, he had been texting a sponsor and playing Call of Duty, verified by game logs and witnesses. So why was he the scapegoat? Billy kept asking questions. At first, quietly, privately, then more boldly. He began contacting family friends, old colleagues, even Rob's lawyer. And then, the tipping point. Romy sent him a photo, a picture of a letter. It was handwritten, with Rob's unmistakable signature at the bottom. The heading? "If I die under suspicious circumstances, read this." Billy stared at the words, heart pounding. Could it be? Had Rob known something was coming? Had he sensed the threat closing in? Had he named names? The letter was dated 6 weeks before the murder. Rob had apparently left copies with both his lawyer and in a locked drawer in his office. But here's the thing. The drawer was empty when investigators searched the house. And the lawyer? He vanished. Well, not literally, but he stopped answering calls, took a sabbatical, left the country, left everything, except for one envelope. It was addressed to Billy, delivered by courier 2 days after the funeral. Inside was a message. Simple, direct, just 5 words. You were right about her. Now let's stop for a moment and ask, who was her? Michelle? That seemed unlikely. Romy? Impossible. Only one name made sense. Only one person fit the emotional profile. The resentment, the silence, the motive. Tracy, the daughter who hadn't spoken publicly since the murder. The daughter who didn't attend the memorial service. The daughter who stood to gain nothing, according to the old will. And perhaps that was the point. Because as Billy would soon learn, there was a new will. One signed just days before Rob and Michelle's death. One that had never been filed. Until Tracy walked into court with it, wearing sunglasses, holding back tears, and claiming she had found it among her father's things. There were contradictions. There were inconsistencies. But the story held for a while, until something else emerged. Something buried in the ashes of the fireplace at the Reiner estate. A piece of evidence no one expected. A piece of evidence that, according to inside sources, shows Rob and Tracy arguing, shouting, Rob threatening to cut her out for good. Tracy saying, then maybe you deserve what's coming. Billy watched the footage in silence. Then he stood up, took a breath, and made a decision. He would no longer stay quiet. He would no longer protect the image of a family already shattered. He would speak. He would tell everything. About the phone call, the letter, the envelope, the will, the tapes, the breakdowns, the manipulation. About Tracy, because somewhere between the Hollywood smiles and the red carpet facades was a daughter who felt forgotten, a daughter who wanted revenge. And Billy? He had nothing left to lose. But what happened next? No one, not even Billy Crystal, could have seen coming. What does horror sound like when it happens in total silence? The Brentwood estate was supposed to be a sanctuary, a $13.5 million fortress nestled among California's elite. The kind of place where you hear sprinklers hissing before sunrise, or maybe the soft thump of a delivery van on a private driveway. Not screaming, not the wet echo of blood hitting marble. But that Sunday morning, everything changed. At 5:54 a.m., a call came into 911. Static, breathing, then a whisper. I need help. I need help. My parents. There's blood everywhere. The dispatcher strained to make out the voice. Female, panicked, barely audible. Ma'am, what's your name? A beat. Then, Romy Reiner. What followed in that 4-minute call is still redacted in LAPD records. But sources say it was disturbing. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. There were no screams. No demands for urgency. Just one sentence, repeated over and over. She was here. She was here. Let's rewind. Just hours before the murders, neighbors reported hearing what they thought were owls screeching. One woman claimed she saw flickering lights through the dense trees that separated the Reiner property from hers. But no one called the police. Why would they? This was Brentwood. Celebrities. Gated mansions. Old money. And the Reiners were Hollywood royalty. But as dawn broke, a black and white unit cruised slowly through the ornate wrought iron gates of 2024 Ashcroft Lane. The officers expected maybe a medical emergency. A fall. An overdose. What they found was something else. 2 bodies. One at the foot of the grand staircase. One collapsed on the living room rug. Michelle's eyes were still open. Rob's hand was extended toward the hallway, as if reaching for something or someone. There was blood. So much blood. But no signs of a break-in. No shattered windows. No broken glass. No forced entry. And strangest of all, the kitchen was spotless. The dishwasher still humming from the night before. Now let's pause. Ask yourself, if someone broke in to kill 2 high-profile celebrities, wouldn't there be chaos? Signs of a struggle? Noise? A mess? Instead, what investigators described was surgical. Clean wounds. No furniture overturned. Nothing stolen. But the worst detail? Each victim had been stabbed exactly 4 times. Not 3. Not 5. 4. Even spacing. Deliberate force. Almost ritualistic. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was personal, planned, and clinical. Billy Crystal arrived at the scene just before 10 a.m. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't family. Not technically, but Romy had called him again after the paramedics left, and this time her words were clearer. They think Nick did it, but they're wrong. It was her. She hated them. I saw her in the hall. Billy didn't ask questions. He just got in his car. Standing behind the police tape, Billy tried to piece it together. The house, his best friend's house. Now crawling with forensic teams. Romy sitting on the lawn, a blanket over her shoulders, shaking. And inside, 2 bodies being zipped into black bags. Billy wanted to scream, but all he could do was watch. A crime scene technician approached the officers with something in her hand. It was small, pale yellow, torn at the corner. It was a sticky note. On it, scribbled in Rob's handwriting. She knows. I can't stop her. Let that sink in. She knows. I can't stop her. Not he. Not they. She. So who was the she Rob was talking about? By noon, the narrative had already started taking shape. Nick Reiner, the troubled son. History of substance abuse. Mental health struggles. Estranged from his father. He was found in the guest house. Unresponsive. Still wearing the same clothes from the night before. Police brought him in immediately. According to arrest records, Nick was disoriented, slurring his words, unable to explain where he had been for the previous 5 hours. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. His fingerprints weren't on the knife. The murder weapon, a 6-inch Japanese chef's knife from Rob's own kitchen, was wiped clean. But luminol tests showed someone had tried to wash it, then left it back in the drawer. That's right. The knife wasn't even found near the bodies. It was put away. Let's stop for a second. Who commits a double murder and then returns the weapon to its original place? Not someone in a panic. Not someone unhinged. Someone methodical. Someone close. And here's where it gets even stranger. In a second-floor bedroom, detectives discovered a pair of white sneakers tucked neatly into a wardrobe. They didn't belong to Nick. Too small. Women's size 7. The soles were clean, but the laces? Flecked with blood. The tag inside the heel? Tracy Reiner. You read that right. Tracy, Rob and Michelle's daughter. The actress. The quiet one. The one who hadn't been seen publicly in over a year. Her shoes were in the house. But her location that night? Unaccounted for. She hadn't answered any calls or texts in 72 hours. When LAPD tried to contact her, they got a lawyer instead. Meanwhile, the media went wild. Hollywood horror. Reiner family tragedy. Son arrested. Nick Reiner. Killer or scapegoat. What they didn't know, at least not yet, was that Romy had whispered something else to Billy before he left that morning. She left something in the fireplace. The Reiner home had a massive stone hearth in the den. Classic. Elegant. A relic from the 1940s. Fireplace hadn't been used in years. But that morning, there were ashes inside. Fresh ones. And buried beneath the soot, charred scraps of paper. Forensics couldn't recover the full document, but fragments revealed chilling phrases. Not safe anymore. She threatened me again. I think she's waiting until Nick is out of the house. Billy's stomach turned. This wasn't just suspicion. This was a pattern. Rob had seen it coming. And no one listened. Let's go deeper. Why would Tracy want her parents dead? Money? Revenge? Something darker? Court filings later revealed that Rob had altered his will 3 times in the past year. Each time, reducing Tracy's inheritance. The final version, allegedly unsigned, left her with nothing. Instead, the estate would be split between Romy and a nonprofit Rob had founded. But someone did sign a different version. Because 3 days after the funeral, Tracy emerged, flanked by attorneys, holding a new document, notarized, witnessed, dated, giving her control of the estate. And here's the kicker. One of the witnesses listed on that will had been dead for 6 months. Forgery? Setup? Desperation? The courts would need time to decide. But for Billy, the pieces were already falling into place. In private, he told Romy, I think your father tried to warn me. I just didn't listen. Romy looked up, eyes red, voice hollow. He did. You all did. And that's when she handed him something else. A flash drive, found taped under her father's writing desk, labeled with 2 words, play me. And what Billy saw on that drive would turn suspicion into certainty and send shockwaves through Hollywood. But before we get to that, we need to go back to when things started unraveling, back to a conversation 2 weeks before the murders between Rob and Billy, where the cracks first began to show. What do you say when your best friend looks you in the eyes and whispers, I'm scared of my own daughter? Do you laugh? Brush it off? Or do you listen? Even if it sounds like something out of a twisted movie, Billy Crystal had heard Rob Reiner say a lot of outrageous things over the decades. But this wasn't one of Rob's jokes. There was no punchline, just a hollow look, and a growing fear Billy couldn't ignore. Their friendship wasn't just built on Hollywood sets and red carpets. It started long before the fame, before the big budgets, before the awards. Back when they were just two Jewish kids from New York trying to make people laugh. They met in the mid-1970s, during a writing session for a forgotten variety show. Rob had just come off All in the Family. Billy was bouncing between auditions and open mic nights. Both of them hungry, restless, unapologetically sarcastic. They clicked immediately, not over scripts, over stories, family, baseball, bagels. "You're like the brother I never asked for," Billy had once joked. "Then stop calling my mom," Rob snapped back. The room exploded with laughter. And that was it. A friendship sealed by sarcasm and shared ambition. By the 1980s, they were inseparable. Billy was becoming a household name. Soap, Saturday Night Live, and eventually When Harry Met Sally, directed, of course, by Rob. Rob had his own hits. Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, A Few Good Men. They weren't just collaborators. They were each other's sounding boards. Wives vacationed together. Kids played in the same backyards. They were family, which is why, when things started to shift, Billy noticed. It started small. Rob canceled a lunch meeting at the last minute, something he never did. Then he stopped answering texts right away. Then came the silence. For 3 weeks, Billy didn't hear from Rob. Not a call, not a joke, not even a stupid meme. Then, out of nowhere, Rob asked Billy to meet him at a quiet cafe in Laurel Canyon. No public place, no assistants, just them. Billy showed up 5 minutes early. Rob was already sitting, hat low, sunglasses on. Nervous. It was not the Rob Reiner he knew. "Thanks for coming," Rob mumbled, barely making eye contact. Billy tried to lighten the mood. "What? No film pitch. No awkward story about Harrison Ford stealing your parking spot." Rob didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned in and said 6 words that stuck to Billy's ribs like concrete. "I think Tracy wants me dead." It didn't register at first. Billy chuckled awkwardly. "Dead? Rob, come on." But Rob wasn't smiling. He was fidgeting, twitching, paranoid. "Something's changed. She looks at me like I'm the enemy. Like she's waiting for something. She's angry. About money. About mom. About everything." Billy took a slow breath. "You're her father. She's grieving. She's probably frustrated." Rob shook his head. "No, you don't get it. This isn't teenage angst. She knows I changed the will. She knows I gave more to Romy and Nick. She knows." Billy leaned back. "You're telling me you think your daughter. I'm telling you I don't feel safe, Billy." Silence. Long, heavy. Then Rob pulled out a piece of paper. A printed list. Names. Phone numbers. Contacts. "If something happens to me, I want you to have this." Billy blinked. Was this a joke? He looked at the paper, then back at Rob. "You think something will happen?" Rob didn't answer. He just sipped his coffee. Shaky hands. Eyes darting around like he was expecting someone to overhear them. That was 2 weeks before the murder. In hindsight, Billy would replay that moment over and over. The half-smile. The barely contained panic. The way Rob had signed the paper with trembling fingers. It wasn't about paranoia. It was a goodbye. And Billy didn't realize it until it was too late. Let's talk about Tracy. To outsiders, she was the quieter Reiner. No scandals. No DUIs. No red carpet meltdowns. She was in a league of their own. Made a few indie films. Nothing huge. Nothing controversial. But to those who knew the family, there were whispers. That Tracy had always resented the spotlight. That she felt less loved than her siblings. That Rob had shut her out of the creative circle, favoring Romy's flair and Nick's charm over her cool detachment. Billy remembered a holiday dinner years ago. Tracy had shown up late, brought a date no one recognized, and left before dessert. She hadn't spoken to Rob once. Not once. And then there was the money. Rob had been quietly restructuring his estate for over a year. Originally, all 3 kids got equal shares. But in recent revisions, ones Billy had seen with his own eyes, Tracy's name began to shrink, then disappear. Instead, Rob had earmarked funds for charities, screenwriting programs, a new scholarship under Carl Reiner's name. Tracy, according to Rob, had chosen her own path. But paths cost money, and resentment doesn't come cheap. Still murder? It felt insane. Billy couldn't bring himself to believe it. Not fully, not until Romy showed him the drawing. It was the day after the funeral. They were sitting in the family den, untouched since the night of the crime. The air still thick with candle wax and old grief. Romy handed him a folded piece of paper. A sketch. Pencil. Rough. Rushed. A woman. Long hair. Sharp eyebrows. Holding a knife. Labeled beneath in shaky handwriting. T. Billy felt the blood drain from his face. Who drew this? He asked. Romy hesitated. I did. A week before. Why? Because I saw her. In the hallway. She didn't know I was home. There it was again. The hallway. The same one Rob's body was found near. The same one the security cameras had mysteriously stopped recording at 2:17 a.m., 13 minutes before the murders. Tracy had been in the house. And no one had said a word. Billy's hands shook as he folded the paper. His mind spiraled. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't coincidence. This was a pattern. And he had ignored the warning signs for months. Rob's fear. The letter. The list. The silent cafe meeting. All of it. He drove home that night in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't call anyone. Just white-knuckled the steering wheel and tried to remember everything Rob had said to him in that cafe. I can't stop her, Billy. She's too smart. She'll make it look like someone else did it. And now? Nick was in jail. Tracy was silent. And Rob was dead. Billy poured a glass of whiskey. Something he rarely did anymore. Then he opened the envelope again. The one Romy had given him. Inside was one more note. Handwritten. In Rob's scratchy script. If you ever see the fireplace lit again, it means she's back. It means it's already begun. Billy dropped the glass. Because the morning of the murder? Romy told police she smelled smoke. Not cigarette smoke. Fireplace smoke. And that's when Billy made the call. Not to the LAPD. Not to a lawyer. To her. Tracy. Straight to voicemail. He left just 3 words. I know everything. But what she did next would stun even the most jaded investigators. And force the case wide open. What would you write if you knew you were being watched? Not by strangers. But by family. By someone you once cradled in your arms, kissed on the forehead, and called my little girl. Now lurking just beyond the door? Would you scream into the void? Or whisper your truth onto a page? That's what Rob Reiner did. Because deep inside a mahogany desk drawer, one with a broken lock Rob had never gotten around to fixing, there was a leather-bound diary. Black. Worn. Unassuming. Hidden behind a stack of manila folders labeled script drafts was the last record of a man who knew he was running out of time. And inside that diary was a story no screenwriter could have dreamed up. It was Romy who found it. She'd returned to the house days after the funeral. Everyone else had gone. The press, the detectives, even Nick, now sitting behind bars with the media chewing his reputation to pieces. The house was eerily still. Michelle's favorite throw blanket was still folded on the couch. The scent of her lavender diffuser lingered in the hallway. Rob's reading glasses sat on the kitchen counter, untouched. Romy wasn't looking for anything. She wasn't expecting to find evidence. She just wanted a sweater. Instead, she found her father's truth. It was wedged between 2 tax folders. Dusty, tucked far back, like it had been placed there hastily or secretly. Romy opened the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably Rob's. Neat, slanted, with that strange little curve on every lowercase r. She flipped through. Random entries. Notes. Quotes from books. Bits of dialogue he'd scribbled down for potential screenplays. Then, halfway through, things turned dark. The entry was dated March 19th, 6 weeks before his death. She asked again about the will today. I told her nothing has changed. It's not a lie if I don't say anything, but I can see it in her eyes. She knows I'm lying. Romy stopped breathing. She turned the page. The hallway lights were off when I got up to pee last night. They're always on. Michelle swears she didn't touch them. I swear I saw a shadow near the fireplace. For a second, I thought it was Tracy. What do you do when you realize your father might have feared your sister? Romy didn't know whether to scream or run, but something compelled her to keep reading. And what she found unraveled every illusion she still held about her family. The entries grew more frantic as the weeks progressed. April 2nd. Found Nick asleep on the lawn. He said he had a nightmare. I don't think that was it. I think she's manipulating him. He always trusted her more than me. It makes him vulnerable. April 5th. Tracy asked me point blank, "Are you punishing me for Mom's death?" I didn't answer. How could I? She still blames me. I still blame myself. But this is something else. Something worse. April 10th. She's inside more often. She shows up unannounced. I hear doors creaking when no one's supposed to be home. I don't want to accuse her, but I've started locking the bedroom door. It makes Michelle uncomfortable, but I feel safer. April 14th. Told Billy. He thinks I'm exaggerating. I can't blame him. I sound insane. Maybe I am. But I swear to God, if anything happens to me, look at her. Look at Tracy. Let's pause. Rob wasn't a man prone to hysteria. He was precise, logical, a director, a man who made his living crafting stories that made sense. So why would he start documenting fear? What was he anticipating? Or worse, what had he already seen? Billy Crystal would later admit he cried when he read those pages. And Billy doesn't cry easily. But page after page, the transformation was undeniable. Rob had gone from concerned to paranoid to resigned. April 18th, the last full entry. She cornered me tonight. Said if I didn't fix the will, I'd regret it. I told her I didn't know her anything. She just smiled. That's what scared me. She smiled. There was no entry on April 19th. Or April 20th. On April 21st, the day of the murder, there was only a torn-out page, ripped at the seam. But the imprint from the pen still lingered beneath the next sheet, faint but visible under the light. Romy held it up, tilted it, and 3 ghostly words appeared. She's going to. The rest? Gone. Billy brought the diary to a forensic analyst, a friend from a private agency. They scanned the ink, ran pressure tests, tried reconstructing the missing words. They were able to extract one more phrase. Made it look like Nick. It hit Billy like a punch to the chest. This wasn't just theory anymore. This was motive. This was premeditated. This was a script, one Tracy had allegedly been directing all along. But there was more. At the very back of the journal, in a zippered pouch Rob never used, there was a USB stick. It was unlabeled, basic, generic, could have come from any tech store. Billy plugged it into his laptop with trembling hands. On it, only one file. 041821_campfire.mov. The footage was grainy, black and white, no audio, but it was clearly from inside the Brentwood estate. A motion-sensitive security camera hidden in a corner of the den, installed after a break-in scare the year prior. One only Rob and Michelle knew about. And what the footage showed was chilling. Time-stamped, 2:03 a.m., April 21st. A woman entering through the side door. Slim build, hoodie, long hair. She walked with confidence. Familiarity. She didn't turn on any lights. Instead, she moved toward the fireplace. Knelt down. Lit something. The flames flickered just enough to briefly illuminate her face. Clear as day. Tracy Reiner. Billy paused the footage. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't Nick stumbling through the dark. This was Tracy, moving like she'd done it 100 times before. She reached into her coat, pulled out a folder, tossed it into the fire. Then, she stood still for several seconds, just staring into the flames. Then she smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a relieved smile. A calculated one. Then, she turned and vanished into the hallway. 37 minutes later, Rob and Michelle Reiner were dead. And if you're thinking, wait, why didn't the LAPD see this footage? They didn't. Because the camera had been disabled just after that clip. Footage stopped at 2:16 a.m. Files corrupted. Memory wiped. But Rob had removed the USB days earlier, a backup. He must have known. He must have known. Billy sat in silence for hours after watching it. He thought about the dinners, the movie nights, the premieres. Tracy sitting beside her parents, smiling for the cameras, holding Romy's hand, hugging Nick. And now? Now she was the shadow in the hallway, the match to the fire, the ghost behind Rob's final words. He called Romy immediately. Your father didn't just leave a diary, Billy said. He left a message. And it's time someone listened. But exposing Tracy wouldn't be so simple. She had money, lawyers, influence. She could spin a story, discredit Romy, paint Nick as the black sheep, reframe her father's paranoia as old man fears. And unless Billy moved fast, she could walk away from all of it. So Billy did the one thing Rob never wanted him to do. He went public. A press conference. Raw. Emotional. Devastating. He didn't show the footage. Not yet. But he held the diary in his hands. Read passages aloud. Said names. Dates. Details. The media exploded. Billy Crystal accuses Tracy Reiner of orchestrating parents' murder. Hollywood turns on itself. Nick Reiner may be innocent. But nothing, compared to the moment Tracy finally responded. She walked into a lawyer's office flanked by 2 security guards, held a press briefing, and smiled into the cameras. "I loved my parents deeply," she said. "But if my sister and my father's old friend want to destroy my name, then so be it. Let the courts decide." What no one saw. She was wearing the same gold necklace Rob had worn in every family photo for 20 years. And behind her, a glimpse of a folder. Stamped, "Will, final copy." But that copy didn't match the one Rob's lawyer had. And when reporters pressed her, she simply said, "Some pages must have burned." But what she didn't know was that Billy had one more card to play. One final piece of evidence Rob had hidden in a place no one would ever think to look. And once that came to light, there would be no turning back. What makes someone turn? Not in a moment, not in a snap of rage, but over years, over missed birthdays, over forgotten conversations, over growing up in someone else's shadow. What turns a daughter into a ghost? And what turns that ghost into something worse? Long before the headlines, long before the courtrooms, and long before the world began whispering the word mastermind beside her name, Tracy Reiner was just a girl with big dreams and a famous last name. And that was the problem. Because from the moment she could walk, people looked at her not as Tracy, but as Rob Reiner's daughter. That kind of legacy is a crown and a curse. Let's rewind the tape. Tracy was born in 1964. Her biological father was filmmaker Michael Henry, but when her mother married Rob Reiner, he adopted her. Fully, publicly, proudly. He raised her like his own, took her to sets, taught her punchlines, gave her scripts to mark up while she sat on folding chairs just off camera. By the time she was 12, Tracy could quote Spinal Tap before it ever made it to theaters. She grew up backstage. In Hollywood, that makes you royalty. But behind closed doors, it makes you invisible. As Rob's career soared in the 80s and 90s, so did the expectations on Tracy. She was expected to shine, to perform, to carry the Reiner brand with grace and genius. But Tracy wasn't like Romy. She wasn't bubbly. She wasn't instantly likable. She wasn't polished. She was quiet, introspective. Smart, too smart, some said. And she noticed things, like how her father would light up when Romy entered the room, or how he talked about Nick's potential, even after his arrests and rehab stints. Tracy, meanwhile, was called strong, stable. That's code in Hollywood for forgettable. Her early acting roles were modest. A supporting role in When Harry Met Sally, blink and you'd miss her. A bigger part in A League of Their Own, as Betty Horn, the baseball player. Solid, not flashy. But nothing broke her out. She wasn't the star. Not in her family, not on screen. And slowly, that ate away at her. By the early 2000s, Tracy had stepped behind a camera, producing, writing, trying to prove she had something to offer beyond her last name. But Hollywood is cruel. And even with her pedigree, projects fell through. She was Reiner adjacent, not Reiner worthy. Then came the fractures. Subtle at first. Thanksgiving dinners missed. Passive-aggressive jabs in interviews. Tracy speaking less of Dad and more of Rob. She moved out of LA, bought a modest house in Topanga Canyon, started avoiding family events. To outsiders, it looked like independence. To those close to the family, it looked like distance. Cold, calculated distance. But there was one thing Tracy never distanced herself from: money. More specifically, her share of the Reiner legacy. Sources close to the estate say Tracy repeatedly requested updates on the will. When Carl Reiner died in 2020, Tracy allegedly called Rob's lawyer within 24 hours asking if any funds were reallocatable. And when Michelle began getting sick in 2021, Tracy's visits to the Brentwood estate suddenly increased. Not out of affection, Romy claimed, but out of curiosity. Romy told detectives Tracy would show up unannounced, walk around the house like she was taking inventory, and then leave without even hugging their mother. Michelle, near the end, reportedly told a nurse, "She watches me like I'm a clock ticking toward something. But it wasn't just the money. There was something else. Something older. Deeper. Tracy's resentment wasn't just financial. It was emotional. Multiple insiders, including one of Tracy's old therapists who spoke anonymously, described a long-standing grievance. Tracy believed Rob had erased her. He'd turned her into a side character in her own life. She would tell friends that Rob used Romy's quirks in movie scripts, referenced Nick's issues in interviews, and even dedicated projects to Michelle. But never to her. Not once. There was no for Tracy in the credits. No thank you speeches. No interviews where he said, "I owe it to my daughter." And so, the daughter who was once quiet became calculating. The first major family fallout came in 2019. Rob had sold the rights to a new biopic, a passion project. Something he had been writing for years. Tracy wanted in. She pitched herself as co-writer. She brought treatments, mood boards, scene breakdowns. Rob passed. He hired someone else, a young screenwriter, fresh out of film school. Tracy was livid. At dinner that year, she allegedly slammed her wine glass down and said, "You act like I'm a fan, not your daughter." Rob replied, coldly, "You want credit for a legacy you didn't help build." Those words never left her. Not just because they hurt, but because they planted a seed. And then came the 2022 draft of the will. Tracy had expected a third. She got 5%. The rest? Split between Romy, Nick, and a children's media nonprofit founded in Carl Reiner's honor. Tracy appealed. Privately, then legally. Rob stood firm. In his words, "Inheritance is earned through connection, not blood." To a man like Rob, it was philosophy. To Tracy, it was betrayal. Billy Crystal later told a close friend, "She never stopped being the daughter Rob didn't know how to love." And maybe that's what made her dangerous. Not because she was a villain, but because she believed she was owed. So, when the murders happened, and all eyes turned to Nick, Tracy didn't flinch. She cried when the cameras were on. She held Romy's hand at the memorial. She stood beside Billy at the press line and whispered, "He looks peaceful, doesn't he?" But later that night, she called Rob's accountant and requested a copy of the death certificate so she could initiate control of the estate. Now ask yourself, is that grief? Or is that preparation? There's more. Phone records show Tracy had called Nick 11 times in the 3 days leading up to the murders. Each call lasted under 60 seconds. What were they talking about? Why so brief? Was she checking on him? Or coordinating? Nick, under sedation at the county jail, told his lawyer something strange. "She kept asking if I was sleeping okay. Told me to wear the noise-canceling headphones. Said I should unplug for a while." The night of the murders, Nick was wearing those headphones. Police found them on the nightstand. Volume, maxed. Noise cancellation, on. Convenient? Or calculated? When Romy confronted her sister a week later, she asked one question. "Did you hate them that much?" Tracy said nothing, just looked out the window and murmured, "They hated me first." And that's when Billy Crystal made his choice. He told Romy, "We're not just dealing with a broken family. We're dealing with someone who's been writing her own version of the story for years." And the world? They had only read the first chapter. Because buried in the Brentwood estate, in a place no one expected, was a piece of footage that changed everything. A final message from Rob himself, recorded weeks before the murders. And the person he named was not Nick. It was Tracy. But the question wasn't just who did it. The question was, how long had she been planning it? What if the fall guy never even left the guest house? What if the man branded a murderer by every tabloid, every newscast, every Hollywood whisper, was asleep the whole time? What if that was the plan? Nick Reiner has always been a question mark in the Reiner legacy. While Romy walked red carpets and Tracy wrestled with shadows, Nick was the wild card. A soft-spoken, often troubled soul who never quite found his place in the Hollywood machine. He wasn't a failure. He was just adrift. And no one knew that better than his father. Let's start with the basics. Nick, born in 1993, was Rob and Michelle's only biological son. Charming, sensitive, creative. But from an early age, he struggled with anxiety, depression, and what doctors would later call acute identity dysphoria. In a family full of stars, Nick never wanted to perform. He wanted to hide. And hide he did, often behind video games, behind drugs, behind the safe, insulated walls of the Brentwood guest house. By his late teens, Nick had already been to rehab twice. The tabloids had a field day. Reiner's son spirals, out of control. Hollywood heir in heroin hell. But what the headlines didn't tell you was this. Nick wasn't reckless. He was wounded. By the pressure. By the comparisons. By Tracy's relentless criticism, which, according to family insiders, went far beyond sibling rivalry. She used to call him weak, one former housekeeper said. Said he wasn't a real Reiner. Said he'd be nothing but a liability. Rob, to his credit, tried to shield Nick. Bought him the guest house. Stocked it with books, recording equipment, even built a soundproofed mini theater just for him. You don't have to be anyone but you, Rob once told him. And for a while, it worked. Nick was recovering, until Tracy came back. The weeks leading up to the murder were filled with whispers. Nick had been unusually quiet. Romy noted he didn't respond to texts. One friend said Nick missed 2 virtual AA meetings. Another claimed he was off, paranoid, jumpy, like someone waiting for something bad to happen. And then, of course, there were the calls. Tracy called him 11 times in 72 hours. According to call logs, none of the conversations lasted longer than a minute. Most were under 40 seconds. What do you say in 40 seconds? Checking in. Or giving instructions. The night of April 21st, Nick logged into his PlayStation account at 11:04 p.m. He played 2 games of Call of Duty, Warzone. His username, ReinerX93, was recorded in-game with another user confirming voice chat was active. At 12:18 a.m., Nick's status went idle. By 12:30 a.m., he was offline. Neighbors told detectives they heard nothing. No yelling. No movement. One described it as eerily still. But what no one mentioned, not at first, was the dim blue light flickering inside the guest house. Because Nick, he was wearing his noise-canceling headphones. The ones Tracy allegedly insisted he start using again. Now, here's where things get strange. Police recovered those headphones during the sweep of the guest house. Model, Bose Quiet Comfort 45. Volume, maxed out. Active noise cancellation, on. Battery life, 73%, meaning they've been on for hours. In Nick's defense interview, he described falling asleep around midnight. Claimed he took 2 melatonin gummies and watched a YouTube documentary on film theory. He remembered nothing else. Nothing. And when they told him his parents were dead, he vomited. His arrest was swift. By 8:27 a.m., LAPD had placed him in cuffs. Footage shows him weeping, repeating, "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." But the public didn't care. The narrative was set. The troubled son. The addict. The recluse. He fit the frame. Even his mugshot. Pale, messy-haired, eyes glazed from shock, screamed guilty. But Billy Crystal wasn't convinced. Neither was Romy. And neither, eventually, were parts of the LAPD. Because 2 things didn't add up. 1, the knife. It had no fingerprints. Not even Nick's. 2, the angle of the wounds. According to the coroner's report, the killer was shorter than Rob by at least 5 inches. Nick was 6'1". Tracy, 5'6". Then came the burner phone. Discovered under Nick's mattress, it was a basic flip phone, untraceable, prepaid. Only one number saved. Labeled T. Text messages, though mostly deleted, showed one remaining entry. April 20th, 10:13 p.m. were the headphones. You need rest. That message alone didn't prove anything. But paired with the timeline, it reeked of manipulation. Let's step back and ask a hard question. What if Nick was set up? Think about it. He's the easiest target. He has a history of drug use. A record. He's secluded, vulnerable, already medicated, easily discredited. And on the night of the murders, he's unconscious, unaware, perfect alibi, and perfect scapegoat. Who'd believe him? No one. Unless someone, like Billy, broke the frame. Billy requested access to the house's smart home logs. He'd remembered something Rob once told him over lunch. This place runs like a spaceship. I can tell if the toilet flushes when I'm out of town. Turns out, Rob wasn't kidding. The smart logs tracked everything. Doors opening, lights flicking, oven usage, room entry sensors. And at exactly 2:08 a.m., the motion sensor in the hallway between the den and the kitchen triggered, followed by a guest room entry alert at 2:12 a.m. But here's the kicker. There was no alert from the guest house, meaning no one exited or entered Nick's space between midnight and 7 a.m. No doors opened, no windows. Nick didn't leave, and no one entered. That left only one possibility. The killer was already inside the main house. And if that's true, then the only person unaccounted for in the home that night was Tracy. She had the code to the side entrance, had stayed there before, knew the layout, knew where the camera was, and how to disable it. And most importantly, she knew how to make sure her brother would sleep through the whole thing. Later, under sedation, Nick told his lawyer, "She kept telling me to trust her, that I was the only one she could talk to, that we had to protect each other from Dad." The lawyer asked him what that meant. Nick just shook his head, then whispered, "I thought she was finally being nice. And if your heart doesn't break at that, then you're not paying attention." Because Nick wasn't a killer. He was used by someone who knew exactly how to exploit his weaknesses, his longing for connection, his guilt, his isolation, and above all his trust. As of now, Nick remains in custody awaiting trial. The charges have not been dropped, not yet, but public pressure is mounting. The evidence is cracking. And Tracy? She's running out of time. Because Billy isn't just fighting to clear Nick's name. He's fighting to finish what Rob started, to expose the truth. And the next piece would come from a source no one expected. A neighbor, with a camera, pointed straight at the side gate, where someone entered the house that night. And it wasn't Nick. What if the fuse wasn't lit the night of the murders? What if it was lit days earlier? Over a table dressed in fine linen, under the soft glow of a chandelier, surrounded by wine glasses, clinking silverware, and forced smiles? What if the murder of Rob and Michelle Reiner began over dinner? To most of the outside world, the Reiners were the picture of elegance. Family-oriented, charming, accomplished. But on the night of April 17th, just 4 days before the murders, something happened inside the Brentwood estate that would shake the family tree to its roots. And no one wants to talk about it. Until now. It was supposed to be a reunion. Rob, ever the sentimentalist, had invited all 3 of his children, Tracy, Romy, and Nick, to a private dinner to commemorate what would have been Carl Reiner's 101st birthday. He wanted to cook. Michelle wanted peace. Romy hesitated, but agreed. Nick, recovering from a minor relapse, said he'd stay in the guest house and just come for dessert. And Tracy? She confirmed she'd come. But she wasn't coming for cake. The table was set for 6. Rob, Michelle, the 3 kids, and a guest, Daniel, Tracy's new friend. A financial consultant from Beverly Hills. Slick, overgelled, overconfident. Rob reportedly disliked him on sight. Felt like he was reading the walls for value. One housekeeper overheard Rob say before guests arrived. The night began politely. Pinot Noir, goat cheese canapes, soft jazz in the background. But as the main course landed, rosemary lamb, Rob's favorite, the tension cracked. It started when Romy mentioned she'd been approved for a small film grant through a nonprofit Rob had co-founded. A proud moment. Father-daughter bonding. Tracy rolled her eyes, then smirked, then said, loud enough for the whole table, "Must be nice to be the favorite again." Silence. Forks froze. Michelle looked at Rob. He cleared his throat. "It's not about favorites, Tracy. It's about showing up." Tracy didn't flinch. "Oh, I've shown up. Just not in a way you approve of." Rob tried to redirect. "Let's not do this here." But Tracy wasn't done. "Romy gets money. Nick gets rehab. I get judgment." Nick stood up to leave. Tracy snapped. "Where you going? Too loud in here for you." Michelle stood. That's when it exploded. Rob slammed his wine glass down. Hard. "Enough, Tracy. We invited you here to honor my father, not to attack your siblings." Tracy stood too. "Oh, your father? You mean the one who never acknowledged me? The one who made it very clear which of your kids mattered?" Rob's voice shook. "This isn't the time." Tracy stepped closer. "It never is. Not when it's about me." And then, the line. The one no one would forget. The one that would echo days later when 2 bodies hit the floor. "You think you're untouchable because you're loved. But love's just a story we tell ourselves, until someone edits the ending." Let that sit. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. And nobody at that table missed it. Romy left in tears. Nick locked himself in the guest house. Rob sat in silence while Michelle cleaned up the dishes. And Tracy? She left with Daniel, laughing as they walked down the stone path. Like she'd won something. Billy Crystal heard about the dinner the next morning. Rob called him. His voice, tired, rattled. "She scares me, Bill," Rob said. "I don't think I'm being paranoid anymore." Billy asked if she threatened him. She didn't have to, Rob whispered. She's already decided how this ends. So why didn't he report it? Why didn't he tell someone? Because this was family. And in Hollywood, family scandals don't go to police. They get buried in therapy sessions, dodged on late-night interviews, and whispered about at Oscar parties. But sometimes, what's whispered becomes weaponized. What no one expected, however, was that someone else was watching. A neighbor. The Armstrongs. Living 2 doors down, they'd recently installed a new security system with perimeter-facing cameras, one of which captured footage of the Reiner driveway the night of April 17th. And what that footage revealed was a key piece of the puzzle. 10:46 p.m., Tracy leaves the house. 10:47 p.m., her car backs down the driveway. 10:49 p.m., she pulls over just past the gate and begins talking to someone. Off camera. For 7 minutes. Then she speeds off. Who was she talking to? We didn't know until the Armstrongs enhanced the audio. Just a few seconds. A male voice. Soft. Mumbling. But one phrase is crystal clear. Don't back out now. The voice? Believed to be Nick. Wait, what? Did that mean he was in on it? Was Tracy recruiting her brother? Or coercing him? Blackmailing him? That conversation, those 7 minutes, are now under forensic audio analysis. But one thing is certain. That dinner wasn't a family gathering. It was a war room. A last supper with poisoned words instead of wine. And for Tracy, it may have been the night she set her plan into motion. After that night, Romy said her father changed. He stopped leaving the house. Started locking his office. He slept with his cell phone under the pillow. Told Michelle not to answer the door for anyone, not even Tracy. And most haunting of all, he began writing again. Not screenplays. Letters. Dozens of them. Most addressed to Billy. Some to old friends. One to the police. None sent. Just drafts. Hidden in drawers. Tucked in book spines. One of them ended with the line, "If I'm gone by month's end, it won't be because of age. It'll be because of blood." Billy didn't know about the letters until Romy found them. She called him, weeping. He knew Billy. He knew. And yet, no one stopped it. Why? Because family blinds us. Even to the people who might be holding the knife. But what happened after the dinner? What happened that night, when everyone went to bed and the wine wore off and the house went silent? Well, someone else saw. The housekeeper, who swore she heard a door open after midnight. And footsteps. Not Nick's. Not Romy's. A woman's. Heading toward Rob's office. When asked why she didn't say anything sooner, she whispered, "Because she paid me not to." Tracy. And what was in that office? Rob's final handwritten will. The one that cut Tracy out completely. The one that went missing days later. The one Tracy found after the funeral. Filed with brand new signatures and one very suspicious clause. A caretaker reimbursement, granting Tracy full control over the estate if Rob and Michelle died within 6 months of each other. Guess how long it had been? 5 months and 28 days. Coincidence? Or design? The dinner party was never just dinner. It was a declaration. Tracy wasn't breaking bread. She was drawing battle lines. And by the time anyone realized it, the war was already over. But the next chapter would come from a confession. Not from Billy. Not from Romy. Not even from Nick. From someone who had remained silent since the day of the murder. Daniel, Tracy's mysterious dinner guest, who vanished just days after that night, and whose name would soon appear on a witness list no one expected. What does it take to finally break a silence? A broken heart? A body on the floor? Or a midnight call that confirms every suspicion you were too afraid to say out loud? For Billy Crystal, it was all three. April 22nd, 12:39 a.m. The day after the murders. Billy sat alone in his study, unable to sleep. The whiskey he poured hours ago still sat untouched on the desk. Rob was gone. Michelle was gone. And Nick? Arrested. Meanwhile, Tracy hadn't spoken a word to the press, or Billy. Romy was in hiding. The world was unraveling. And Billy couldn't stop the ache in his chest. The guilt. The sickening realization. He'd seen it coming. That night, Billy stared at the USB Romy had given him, the one recovered from the back of Rob's hidden journal. He'd already watched the grainy footage, Tracy lighting the fire, staring into the flames, smiling like she was watching everything she ever hated go up in smoke. But he hadn't opened the other file. The second one, a voice memo labeled simply, BC, for Billy. He clicked it, and there it was. Rob's voice. Warned. Slower than usual, but clear. Hey Billy, if you're hearing this, it means something's happened. And if I know Tracy like I think I do, then I'm gone. Billy's eyes welled with tears. You always said I was dramatic. Maybe you're right. But listen to me now. I'm not paranoid. I'm not crazy. I'm being hunted. By my daughter. A pause. Then. She's not well, Billy. She hides it better than Nick ever could, but it's there. The rage. The calculation. She blames me. For everything. For being adopted. For being left out. For not making her the star of this family. I've tried to fix it. But some things. Another long pause. Some things can't be rewritten. Billy felt the floor disappear beneath him. This wasn't just fear. This was a farewell. If they say Nick did it, don't believe it. Tracy's been circling him for months. Playing the part. Rebuilding the sibling bond just long enough to twist it. She's clever. She's cold. She'll make it look like he snapped. He didn't. I swear to you. Then Rob's voice broke. I don't know if anyone will believe me. But you might. So I'm asking. No. Begging. Finish what I started. Protect Romy. Clear Nick's name. And for God's sake, don't let her win. And finally, one more thing. She had someone helping her. Someone inside. And I think you've already met him. End of file. Billy didn't sleep. Not that night. Not the next. Not until he remembered Daniel. Tracy's date from the dinner party. The financial advisor. The man Rob couldn't stand. The one who vanished just days after the murders. No one could find him. No digital trail. No social media. Even Tracy pretended she barely knew him. But Billy did some digging. He reached out to an old contact at a private security firm. And within 48 hours, he had a name. Daniel Mathers. Former hedge fund manager. Investigated for fraud in 2018. Charges dropped. Later tied to a shell company that invested heavily in failing entertainment startups, including one linked to Tracy's failed production venture in 2021. Daniel wasn't just a date. He was an accomplice. And he had a reason to help Tracy. She owed him hundreds of thousands. Money Rob refused to cover. And when Tracy's inheritance got slashed, that money wasn't coming. Unless something changed. Billy brought this information to Romy. She was stunned, but not surprised. I saw them whispering, she said. In the hallway. She told him, you'll get yours. Just wait. That's when Billy knew. Rob's death wasn't spontaneous. It was a script. Plotted. Rehearsed. Directed. And Daniel? He was holding the boom mic the whole time. But what Billy didn't expect was a message. Sent to him at 2:14 a.m. that very night. From a blocked number. A voicemail. Crackling. Distorted. But unmistakably Daniel's voice. I can't do this anymore. She said it would be quick. She said Nick wouldn't feel anything. She lied. It got messy. I didn't sign up for blood. I'm leaving town. You'll never find me. But maybe this will help. Attached was an audio file. A recording. It was short. Only 37 seconds. But it changed everything. Tracy, don't flinch. You knew what this was. He's going to take the fall. That was the plan. Daniel. But he's your brother. Tracy, he's an addict. He'll forget. Everyone else already has. Billy's hands trembled. This wasn't theory anymore. This was proof. And he was going to take it public. He contacted LAPD first. Provided the file. The diary. The video. Requested witness protection for Romy. But the moment this went into police hands, Tracy did something no one saw coming. She held a press conference. In front of dozens of cameras, Tracy Reiner appeared on the steps of her attorney's office. Composed. Professional. Wrapped in black. I have endured unspeakable pain, she said. My parents are dead. My brother has been institutionalized. And now, I'm being accused of things I didn't do. She paused, looked directly at the camera, and said, Billy Crystal is exploiting my father's death for attention. If he continues, we'll see him in court. A threat. A public one. Not against Romy. Not against Nick. But against Billy. The only man left who still had the power to stop her. And if that wasn't chilling enough? Later that night, Billy's car was broken into. Glove box rifled. Laptop gone. Nothing else taken. Just the device that had all the files. Was it a coincidence? Or a warning? Billy, shaken but furious, issued a statement of his own. Rob Reiner was my friend for 45 years. I'm not doing this for fame. I'm doing this for truth. If Tracy Reiner wants a trial, she'll get one. And she won't like how it ends. But Tracy had one more move left. She filed a counterclaim, alleging Billy, Romy, and unidentified media collaborators had forged the diary. She called it a sick attempt to steal the estate through lies and digital manipulation. But there was one problem: handwriting analysts, 2 of them, hired independently. Both confirmed the journal was 100% authentic. Not just the writing, but the fingerprints on the pages. Rob's and Tracy's. You know what that means. She read it. Before the murder, she knew her father suspected her, and she did it anyway. So Billy did the only thing left. He gave a national interview. Prime time. No scripts, no spin, just pain. Tears welled in his eyes as he described the last words Rob ever said to him. She's not here to say goodbye. She's here to erase me. And when asked if he was afraid of what Tracy might do next, Billy leaned forward, looked into the camera, and said, "Let her come. I'm not hiding anymore." But what came next would turn the case inside out, because someone else was ready to speak. Someone who had been silent since day one. Someone who saw everything. From the inside. A man who worked at the Reiner estate for 7 years. And the day before the murders, he was fired. By Tracy. His name? Luis Ortega, the groundskeeper. And his confession would leave the world breathless.